Hello, word nerds, and happy Sunday, and welcome to our Q&A chat. I am super excited. We're here to answer all of you guys' questions and talk about anything and everything, really. So to go ahead and get us started, what have you guys read or watched recently that you've been really into?
I'm rereading. Sorry, I was gonna say I'm rereading the Raven Boys series. So very cliche of me, I know.
I was also going to say that it's nice that this Q&A has two of the newest WordNerds and then two of the OG WordNerds. So we can answer an array of questions. I finished watching something recently, which I never watch anything ever, but I watched Our Flag Means Death, and it was so good. I was sick for this week, so I was like, I'll watch a show, and I'm so glad I watched that season. It was so great.
Did Megan finally get to you?
I'll have to check it out. It sounds good.
Yeah, everyone that I knew was like, it's the thing, and I'm like, pirates, I have to, and it was so ridiculous and such a great one. But yeah, I mentioned in our group chat that I was like, I finished watching Our Flag Means Death, and Megan just sent a message that was like this big and just all hearts and celebratory emojis. Yeah, I'm very excited.
I haven't been reading much lately, but I have been watching TV. But last night we just wanted something put on while we were eating dinner, and then we somehow ended up watching 4 episodes of The Ultimatum on Netflix. Which we normally are not the reality TV people, but we were people have been talking about this. Let's just put it on while we eat, and then we watched 4 episodes because we just couldn't look away.
What is that one?
It's I don't remember how many couples it is, 8 couples or something.
Okay.
And I think it's less than that, maybe 6 couples. Who all of these couples have been together for at least a couple years, and one member of the couple wants to get married, and the other member is on the fence about getting married. And so the one that wants to get married has given the other one an ultimatum, we're either getting engaged or we're breaking up. And so they bring all these couples together, and for a month, so they basically have to break up for a month and choose someone from one of the other couples to date for 3 weeks and live with. So they have a trial marriage, and they live with someone else for 3 weeks. And the whole thing is whether will they get together with the new person? Will they get back together with their old person and get married, or will they just break up and go their own way?
Sounds very messy. Very messy.
So messy.
Wow.
That seems like some kind of ridiculous rom-com that gets optioned for TV. That is so ridiculous.
It really,
I love it.
Really.
And it's hosted by Nick Lachey from 98 Degrees.
Of all the people. Interesting.
Yes. It's definitely a train wreck type show, but I'm gonna keep watching. Gotta find out what happens.
It definitely sounds on the same par as Love is Blind.
Yeah.
How about you, Des? What have you been reading or watching lately?
I just finished watching Severance on Apple TV. I watched it twice, season 1 twice. And then I'm also reading No One's Watching by Alyssa Cole. And I'm 150 pages into that. So it's pretty good so far.
Nice.
Oh, I am about, now I'm 10 chapters in to Holly Black's new book of Night. I got an advance copy for Tor. Oh my gosh, it comes out in a couple of days on May 3rd. It is so good. It's so Holly Black, who does Tithe and the Cruel Prince series. This is her first adult book, and it's about a ex-con girl named Charlie in a world where people can alter shadows, and there are people called glooms or glomists that can alter shadows or make them give you certain powers if you feed your shadow enough of your memories or your blood or whatever. And our main character gets caught up in this black market deal, and it is bananas. It's like a little bit like Ninth House.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of when you're saying that. Yeah.
Note one thing is that it's nothing like Holly Black's other works. So like if you think it's going to be like Cruel Prince, that's not going to be it. And also someone said that it's like Ninth House and the Night Circus. It is nothing like the Night Circus. I don't know why people say that. So it's like a little bit like Vicious thing.
Okay, interesting.
It's really cool.
It sounds really good.
Yeah, I was up pretty late last night reading some of that.
I just put it on my wish list, so.
Good call.
Feel free to ask us questions in the comment section. This is a Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
We'll gladly talk about TV and books though, like all night.
Yeah.
So
any Q's and any A's.
Well, I'm trying to think about like what stuff that we get asked the most, just like in general, you know.
Usually about like starting a book, people ask that a lot. Like, how do you get started? And Griswold says, now I'm a little upset I didn't put that book on hold when I saw it at the library. You still have time, right?
Yeah,
I would assume.
You still got time. It's okay.
Do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like, what's a piece of advice for starting a book or starting a new project?
I always think learning how you plot or don't plot in some people's case. Like that was always a big thing for me. Like one of the things I feel like I achieved this month was finding like a way of plotting that I really, really like more than anything else I've tried so far. Cause I kept switching between note cards and then Plotter, like programs on the computer and stuff. And then I finally found out kind of a way that I can see my plot all on paper, but still have it into sections. And it's not frustrating and confusing anymore. So I'm like, okay, I think I finally found my groove for plotting. So like that might take a while, but once you find that, I think it gets easier to break the book down and to be able to sit down and actually start writing it without feeling overwhelmed. What about you guys?
That's really cool. I just started doing this new thing that I really like. So I always say like I'm a planter, like I'm not a hardcore planner. But I do use the Save the Cat Beats. That's how I plan out. But recently, like I made this like worksheet for myself that's like a scene planner. So like I have a general idea of what's gonna happen in the scene, but right before I write it, I fill out this like worksheet and it helps me write a lot faster.
Do you use the Beth Revis one, like the Paper Hearts one, or a different one? I don't know if she heard me.
Sorry, my computer cut out for a second. What did you say?
I said, do you use a specific worksheet? Like there's a Beth Revis one, or do you just find one offline or what?
I found a couple of examples and I just made my own in Canva for like what I needed.
Oh, nice.
I feel like that's a lot of writing too. Like that's something you realize the more you do it, that it's a lot of just like taking a bunch of different people's like approaches to things and like mushing them together into like a Frankenstein's monster of what works for you for plotting. Like a lot of times, like you're not often going to find like another writer who like has the exact same plotting process as you, but like you can take a lot of pieces of other people's stuff.
It took me a long time to figure out like a happy medium between plotting too much and not plotting enough, because like I have learned that I can. Yes, it is possible to plot too much, and then you end up kind of boxing yourself into this little corner, painting yourself in, so to speak. And then, your story often comes out too rigid, I guess, or you get stuck. I get stuck a lot if I plot too much. So
I think my biggest piece of advice for like new writers is to just like finish a book. Like do what you have to do to finish a book, because once you've finished one manuscript, it gets a lot easier to write I mean, it's still hard always, but I think that's like a huge like hurdle is just like finishing the first book. Because a lot of times for new writers, I know for me and for a lot of you, like it's like you like start a bunch of different ideas and then you give up on them. You start a new one and you like plot a book for like a year or something. And so just like actually like reaching the end on a book just like makes you realize that you can do it. And that makes it a little bit easier in the future, I think. Just feel like I've done this before. I know I can.
Yeah, and realizing that it's not going to be perfect, like what it feels like in your head is not going to come out on the page exactly the way you want it to, but you can't edit something to make it look the way you're picturing it until it is fully on the page. So, yeah.
And this like obviously isn't like universal advice because there's definitely going to be exceptions to this, but I think for the most part as a new writer, like when you do like finish that first manuscript you've ever written from start to finish, like stick it in a drawer somewhere and start on something else, because like usually that first thing you write, I mean you can revise it, but a lot of times you're just gonna want to start over from scratch anyway.
Yeah,
like treat it like just like a practice book.
I think that's important for two reasons. Like I always say, it gives you distance and perspective when you go back and edit it. But I also like, as I continue writing more and more books, it's like, I'm like chomping at the bit by the time I get to the last few pages of the current work in progress, because I have like 50 other ideas. And like, I think being able to start on a new project is so exciting. And so if you don't do that, if you don't let yourself have that joy, it can really feel like a slog just to go straight back to the old project and force yourself to edit that. So I think letting yourself have these little like, creative excitement is so important to the process.
And also as a new writer, you're going to learn a lot from every book that you write. And so like that first book is like, it's going to be a mess, and it's probably better to just start on another book and learn more instead of like being like, I've written my first book and now I'm going to try and get it published. Like a lot of times you still have a lot more to learn about writing at that point. So.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I've learned is that every single book, like no matter how confident I am going into it, which is usually not very, but every single book I start on is so drastically different that I feel like I'm starting all over again, that I am like a new writer and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. It always reminds me of that meme of the dog floating in space and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like that's always what I feel like every time I start a new book. And like I did that with Escape to Witch City 3 separate times. I rewrote that book 3 separate times, and like thank God my editor was patient. But like that's what it felt like every time. Even though it's the same book. I wrote the same book 3 times and still felt like I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, why do we do what we do?
I do think the one like hopeful thing is like at the same time, even though it always feels that way, like when I go back and like look at like the very first draft that I wrote and then like compare it to like the one I wrote last year, I'm like, okay, like there's definitely a difference in quality between these 2 first drafts.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because I think even when it does feel fresh and new and scary every time, like as long as you keep on doing it, you are teaching yourself new things. Like the whole plotting thing, I'm like, why did it take me this long to figure out this is my favorite way to plot? But like now that I know that, I'm really excited to start the next project because like this version of plotting is so fun to me. And I'm like, I know what I'm doing now, sort of, at least for the beginning.
No, this is actually very helpful for me because I finished university last week. So that means that I no longer have an excuse to not write stuff. So now I'm like, oh my God, I have free time now. And I'm going to like,
so
like
exciting.
reorient myself back into writing. And so now I'm like, yes, what else? What? Okay, right. It's like I've been out of it for so long.
The funny thing is, like, if anyone is to ask me, like, oh, I want a new plotting thing. What's your new plotting thing you're so excited about? I'm like, it's the most basic, stupid thing. Like, it's literally just like a paper, and it's like, what do they call it? Hamburger and hot dog. So it's like hot dog style, so sideways. And then I just literally slashed it into columns and went, this is plot line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I just have every scene boxed out according to what subplot is going on. And then a timeline on one side so that I'm not like because one of my biggest weaknesses is like, oh, it's been the same day for like 3 days basically, or like, do the characters never sleep? So I just have like a side column that says, it's Tuesday now. Remember, it's Tuesday. Remember, it's dinner time, whatever. And that works like a charm. It's just so simple. I'm like, why did it take this long?
I
The
do
simple
that,
things
but
sometimes work the best.
Yeah.
I do that, but in a spreadsheet instead of on paper.
Yeah, I can't. I figured out I'm too much of a technophobe. I tried that. I did try that in Excel and went like rage quit and deleted it all.
Andrew says congrats. Thank you so much. And then also Vanessa asked, we're talking about the book that I was mentioning earlier. Yes, it is a new one by Holly Black. It is called Book of Night. It comes out on May 3rd.
Such a good title.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do to celebrate your final day of school, Rachel?
I got sick.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
It's like the ultimate burnout.
No.
I was so bad. Well, actually, so the day that I my final exam was 2 of my friends' birthdays. So I went out with them for a birthday lunch and then a birthday dinner, and then 2 days later I got sick. So I was like, I don't know. I'll celebrate when I have convocation and stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Greswold does say, what new writing software or tools are you using? I recently started using Google Keep to plan my scene. I don't know why, but writing and outlining in different programs is helping me work faster.
Well, we just learned what fancy software Erin is.
My hot dog paper. Well, if Megan were here, she would go off about Plotter. And I did download Plotter as well because Megan was like, preaching about it to people, spreading the good news of Plotter. And I was like, okay, I gotta try. And I do love it in a way because you can add, it has this amazing function where you can add characters to each scene. So you can say, scene number 5, here are the 3 characters that are involved in this scene. And they have little pictures beside them and everything. And I really did like that function of it because it would give me and you can also put write down all your settings, click on which setting this scene is set in. So if you're a computer person and you like programs like this, you will probably love that. But like I said, I'm like a caveman when it comes to technology. So
it was too it's not like it's too complicated for me, but it was just it felt like there was another barrier to entry to use it. And also I get really distracted on my computer. So if I have anything open other than just whatever word processor I'm using, like Google Docs or Word, I'm not going to get things done, which is why I like the paper method. I'm interested in what you do, Erin, too. I'm going to have to get more details about.
For sure.
That's how I can use it.
I'll take pictures and be like, this is my caveman style sheet.
Honestly, if you could, that would be super
I'll do that.
Yeah, I'm not using anything fancy. I'm using Google Sheets and Google Docs these days, and that's it. Every once in a while I like to try something new, but I find that the new stuff I use, even when I enjoy it, it never ends up being a long-term thing for me. Yeah. I was into For the Words for the while, and then I just stopped using that and stuff like that, So a lot of times that's kind of a shiny new fun thing to motivate me, but I always just go back to the basics. And right now I have so little time to write that it's easy to just have it in Google Docs, be able to pull it up at any time on any device. I do I haven't been using it since I finished the first draft of this book so much, but when before I started it for Nano last year, I made a Notion page for my book, and that was fun because I felt it was kind of a good meeting place of Pinterest plus plotting information. So it was I could put images and information about my characters, so I could have information and pictures in the same place. And so that was fun. And I having that just to go back and look at.
That reminded me, I do use Notion. I have two different Notion boards for the same project.
I don't actually know what that is. What's Notion?
It's really, you might like it. It's kind of like an online journal, is how it's described. But there's so many different templates. It's really hard to describe. But it's a way to like organize different things. So I have two for my project. I also use them for like just like my personal life. I have one that's like my media consumption list. So every TV show or movie I watch, I rate it and review it just for myself.
That's cool.
And so I have that on Notion. And like they have like a budget, so I like keep like my budgeting stuff on Notion, and it's like it's nice. It's not overwhelming. It can seem overwhelming at first, but like seriously, like 10 minutes of playing around with it, and you can pick it up pretty fast.
Because one thing I do consistently use is Pinterest. Surprisingly enough, because I do like I am someone that when I'm first introducing a character on the page, I do need to have a photograph in front of me normally, just to like, I don't do a huge page of description, but I like knowing like how tall are they, what's their presence like when they come into a room, how are they going to talk, how are they going to act, and have like a few tidbits thrown in there. So I really do like having like a Pinterest board with a few pictures of someone. So yeah, maybe I'll check that out. If it's, you said sort of like Pinterest plus notes, that would be good. We had a question. Vanessa asks, how do you outline in a spreadsheet? Someone else will know better than me on this one.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Erin described, but just in a spreadsheet. So like I have across the top, the columns are like my different subplots. Plus sometimes I'll have things like I might have a column that's just like character development, or like if I have a mystery, like I might have a column that's like red herrings or clues. And so like columns like that, and then down the side it's just like chapter 1, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and it's just me being like, this is, so it's just a way that I plot, instead of like having it listed out in an outline. Like that visually helps me, and it makes it easier to like move things around when I need to.
So I, weirdly enough, I literally have, and this is all scribbled on because I like transferred it over to be neater, but I don't know if you guys can see that. So I have my incredibly sloppy columns there, but one says like extra notes on the side because inevitably I will forget something. Then I've got number, so numbering the scenes, the time each scene is set, and then I just have like the main plot, so like the main thing that's happening in a scene. Then I have the love interest in the character, what I've titled like monster in the house. So like this is a horror novel, so this is all the scary stuff that's happening. I have a cult involved, so I have a cult plot line, and then a couple of other plot lines, like other characters are doing these things, and everyone that has a subplot is listed in these little tiny squares essentially. And then I can write and kind of like cross them off once I write, be like, oh, the scene is done. So satisfying.
Wow.
And Des, I just put a link in our private chat if you want to like add it to the regular chat, because I don't have access to that.
Yes.
We did, or I have a video on our channel about plotting with a spreadsheet. If anybody wants to look at that. So.
Nice. I think, and Griswold says I should look into Rocketbook. I think my friend gave me Rocketbook note cards, like little index cards. I do use those quite regularly because they're really cool, because you can write out the plot card, and then after you're done you can erase it and reuse it. In pen. Everyone's like, yeah, that's a pencil, good job. But yeah, it's like a pen is an erasable pen, and the note cards are reusable, and then you can like snap a picture and apparently upload it to an app. So yeah, I do use those a lot.
Cool.
I thought about getting one for school, and then getting one for like writing and stuff too. But like now I'm so close to being done, I only have a few more classes. I would get one and it would just be for writing stuff. But it's something I'll definitely consider getting one too.
Kayla confirmed I did, because I'm the best. Yes, you are the best. You got me those note cards. I still use them regularly. Vanessa says, I want to read that book. Hopefully you will get to read that book. I'm still working on it. My agent wants to see it when it's done, but that will be not for a really long time. So hopefully it'll sell at some point. Emma posted her, or Des did, I'm not sure, posted Emma's plotting video with a spreadsheet.
It was a group effort.
It's a group effort. Good
It
job,
was a group
guys.
effort.
Do we want to talk, like, we're doing a Q&A here for anyone that's kind of come in late. Do we also want to talk about, like, the stuff we're working on lately? Anybody? Or anything you're excited about in the future? Exciting ideas?
Okay, I can, because I'm actually really passionate about writing for the first time in a long time, and it feels amazing.
Hell yeah.
Yay.
But I'm working on a book that is like steeped in Egyptian mythology called The God's Champion. I'm
Amazing
really excited
title.
about that. It's been fun to research. And then I also got another idea for a like potential trilogy about like abolitionist Black girl witches.
Ooh.
So I want to work on that right after I'm done with The God's Champion. So it's pretty cool. And I'm like really interested in like self-publishing. I've been like researching more and more, and it's becoming more and more appealing. So one of the self-published authors I follow on YouTube, Bethany Atazada, has like a planner for your book, basically like to plan out how long it would take for your book to go from like outline to published, to give yourself like self-imposed deadlines. That's been really nice. So I have like all of my outlines for like, the next like several months planned out. And so that feels good. And it's broken down into like small obtainable goals.
Very cool. What about you, Emma or Rachel? I know you just graduated, Rachel, so you're probably like, whoa, okay.
Are you tired of being asked what's next?
Yeah.
Well, like I don't know, because I just right now my laptop is just full of half-written random bits and pieces of stuff that like I haven't looked at for years. So it'd be nice to just go back and be like, I think this was a fantasy novel, but like I don't remember who any of you people are, and we'll see what happens. Of course, I really want to write a Hades and Persephone retelling.
Yeah.
So maybe something like that. I also was like kicking around some kind of like King Arthur retelling for a little while. So that's like that's on the back burner. But like again, I'll have to see what I even have and like retrieve a bunch of like notes for stuff. But yeah, like so it's starting to like, you know, the wheel is being like dusted off and it's like slowly trying to turn again. So we'll
the
see
gears are turning again.
Yeah, they're a little rusty, but like something's happening. So we'll see what ends up going on.
Well, you studied so many cool things during your time at school. I remember even the last time you did like prompts, I was like, all of this is really cool, and you could absolutely write a book with this in it. Like,
oh yeah, like I have a giant note that's just been stuff of things I've thought about and things like names and titles and like small plot lines that I've just been writing down, but I've been just writing down those for like 3 years. So now I'm like, all right, it's time to like deep dive in, dust some stuff off, like see if I don't even remember half the stuff that's on there. So maybe there will be like a full book that's just like already written waiting for me somewhere. I don't know. We can only hope.
What about you, Emma?
So I wrote a rom-com during Nano last year, and I have like just barely gotten started on revisions. Like I basically just have like note cards and like some notes about what I want to do. So I really need to like get to work on like figuring out the changes I'm going to make and how I'm going to implement them. So kind of just at that like kind of beginning of revisions phase.
Nice. I'm kind of in the same.
That's so fun.
Space. I'm like equal parts fun and terrifying. I find
it's fun, but I find my issue is just that I think it takes more focused time than drafting does for me. Like drafting, I can sit down for, if I have 30 minutes, like during lunch break, I can like write some words. But like this takes a lot more, like I need longer stretches of time, and like with note cards, like I need to be home, like on my office floor, you know, spreading stuff out. And so it's harder for me to find that time because like I work full time, I have a kid, you know, like, so like that makes it a lot harder, where I feel like drafting's easier for me to just do anywhere. Revisions I kind of have to do like at home.
That's really true actually. Because I like, if I'm just flat out drafting, I will just go to a coffee shop and bring my laptop. But like, it's the same with me right now because I am revising and I have these plot sheets. But it's like a revising / also kind of drafting, which is kind of like the worst of both worlds. It feels like, because you can't go anywhere. You got all these notes and all these things like, And then also it feels like I'm kind of like adrift as well, because I'm like, I kind of have to rewrite like most of this. So
really always makes me wish that I had 2 monitors so I could have like the manuscript up on one and the new document on the other. Like,
yes, that would be a dream setup. I would love to get a second monitor and just be able to have, like you said, the old manuscript here, the new manuscript there, because right now I'm just like, it's chaos. I'm just writing in the old manuscript, like hopefully this makes sense later.
I'm gonna get a second monitor. That's actually a really good point. Everybody in my house has 2 monitors except for me, so
well, I have them at work and it's so nice. And then I have 2 big monitors at work, and then I come home and it's like I have my 13-inch MacBook.
Oh no. Yeah, maybe I'll see if I can get another one. Then you could also like put like Pinterest and stuff up on there and be like, when you're writing about this character, here they are. That would be really helpful. Mr. Rororsuri, I'm sorry if I said your name really wrong, says make it gay, Rachel. I fully agree.
I absolutely will. Yeah, I'll absolutely make it gay.
Do it. I don't know. Kayla, you said you got a 32-inch and it's heaven for that. Meaning
32-inch monitor.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, but that's not TV.
That's not 2 monitors though. That's just one giant monitor.
Well, like television. At work, I think it's a 27-inch MacBook, or not MacBook. Oh my God, could you imagine? Like a fold-up MacBook. Like I think it's a 27 or like a 30-inch monitor, and it's so nice. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wish I could buy one myself, but I can't afford that.
Yeah, no. Plus, I have a 4-year-old that comes in and tries to jam buttons with sticky hands and stuff. So I'm just not going to buy a fancy computer. That's just not happening. And Griswold says, I cleaned the stack of paper I store under my desk and found 1 page of notes about a story with a woman who's an assassin with a price on her head who takes out the men who come after her. Ooh, that sounds good. Yeah. Don't you love finding a note and it's like, oh, here is a whole book. How convenient that I left that for myself.
I love the notes that you just like don't even remember. Like some of them it's like, oh yeah, this sounds familiar. And some of them they're like, that's my handwriting. But like, I don't remember having this idea.
Every once in a while, it's a good idea.
I found a partial manuscript on a flash drive like recently, and it's like the book I was working on when I first joined the WordNerds. So it's like my soulmate novel, and I was like, oh my gosh! So,
I remember that one.
I don't think there's anything there to like pursue, but it's interesting that I found it.
Every once in a while, I'll go through my notes app and be like, did I write that? I'm like, that's not bad. Okay, yeah.
Thanks, pass me. You're so smart.
Like, that was a good one. All right, yeah. Then sometimes I'm going through and I'm like, who, what, why? No, we're still in this right now. Like,
I hate the ones that like you can tell that it probably was a really good idea, but like you don't understand what you wrote enough. You know, like you don't remember it, and the note you left like doesn't make enough sense, and you're like, I know this was a great idea, but like,
or at least that you were really excited about it. Like it's always at night for me too. Like I wake up and I'm like blindly scribbling something out, and in the morning it's like this makes no sense, but I thought it was brilliant at the time.
So you're like orange tree, what?
What does it mean?
One time I found like some like dialogue, but it was like a book I was working on. I think like it was when I had first started the book, I had come up with an idea for like the scene and some dialogue. And so I just like wrote down the dialogue with no dialogue tags or anything. And so then when I found it later, when I was like revising the book, I was like, I don't know who was saying this.
Oh no.
I write notes regularly that I like hope that no one else ever finds because out of context they're horrible. Like maybe we'll murder this guy. Yeah, like they're usually horror / cannibals / murder books, and the sticky note always says like rip out his tongue ? Like stuff like that. You know, it's like don't drop that in the airport or whatever. Like
If anything ever happens to your spouse, you're in trouble.
Yeah. They're like, look at these sticky notes. She definitely murdered him.
Planning this all along.
Well, if anyone broke into your house and they found that, they'd be like, I'm out of here. Like,
I hope so. I mean, security system right there.
I'm trying to think of like other. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead first, and then I'll read the comment here.
Oh, well, mine is a question. So.
Oh, okay. Andrew Walker says, I've been struggling with reading through my nano book for revisions, and I like it, but I can't ever seem to stay focused enough to finish. I feel like it's a book problem. I don't know. Reading through the nano book. I do sometimes get that. With one nano book in particular, it was the nano book, but I have also had that with other manuscripts where I just spent so long on it that I either needed to just put it aside for like a good long time because I was so sick of it that it gets to a point where your own words don't, like, you can't be subjective at that point. So I would try putting it aside for a while. And if that doesn't work, if you come back to it and it's still an issue, you could try, like, I put things in a different font sometimes, or I'll print it out and read it in a different room, on paper. And that can sometimes help. But it might just be a case of like you're trying to return to it too soon. You might need even more time. I don't know.
And like that could just be how it is for you. I don't know if you've ever experienced that with other books, but it could just be that way for you. Like even when I like a book I've written and I think it's good, I have trouble reading through my drafts. Like it's just difficult for me to like read my own work because I've spent so much time in it and I already know it. Like it's just like not interesting to me almost because I'm like, well, I know everything that's in this book. So like I have trouble like focusing on reading. So sometimes I don't even like read through the whole thing. Like I might skim through some of it. Or if I've had like alpha readers, I'll just go through their comments and that like jogs my memory enough that I'm good to go. And that's another reason I like having like a plot spreadsheet because I can just go through that spreadsheet instead of having to like read every word of the book because I've just found it takes me like weeks if I try to like read through the whole draft because I can't stay focused on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I often do what Emma, you just said you did, which is go through scene by scene. And because normally I have like an outline, sure, but a lot of times I've strayed from that. So I'll go through and write out like, okay, in this scene, this is what actually happens. And then I write out each scene. So I have the full outline there again. And I maybe, that creates a thing where you don't necessarily have the problem where you're like, I'm so bored because you're tracking the plot rather than just reading straight through. That might help. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I know for me, it's that I can't read like word for word what I've written. So yeah, it's like I can skim through and be like, okay, these things happen, but just like reading word for word, I'm like, I just feel uncomfortable reading my own words for some reason.
I think, boy, you're gonna have to get over that.
Because
I was like, I think that with the whole like reading it out loud, changing the font, printing it out, like because in the publishing process, having to read my own words over and over and over. You have developmental edits, sometimes 2 or 3 versions of that. You have copy edits, you have line edits. You have to read that book like it feels like about 8 times. And so, yeah, I would get to a point where I would try all these different things to make it look like it wasn't my own writing. And I found myself at one point like reading it out loud in funny accents, like stuff like that, right? Utterly ridiculous. But find something that works essentially for you so that you can read it if you need to. What were you going to say, Rachel, before the question? You had another question, I think.
It was a great answer. No, I'm just thinking of like, I was thinking of writing advice and what have you. And if I don't want this chat to just be the exact same of like, how do you start a novel? How do you plot? Like whatever. So I'm like, but then I started thinking about writing questions and like, what is a question that you guys get asked about writing all the time that you really don't like? Or that like you're like tired of answering?
Oh, where do you get your ideas? Number one question.
Hmm.
I think when Witches of Ash and Ruin came out, every single interview I did had that question, and I was just like copy paste at that point.
Well, yeah, because like whenever I would, I used to run the book events for when I used to work at my bookstore, and without a doubt, like every time the author would open the questions up, not like one of them would be like, how did you start writing? Or like, yeah, what idea did you get to make this novel? And it was always like the exact, what's your best writing advice? And I was like, these are so boring. Like, can you guys not like anything else, please? So like, what's something you don't like getting asked?
It's always, like it's going to be a new event for those people. So and it's like every interview, the interviewer is like not someone who, has to have those questions asked again, or like it's a new question to them. So I get that, and I will answer it politely, but it unfortunately is going to be the same recycled answer over and over, because that's the answer, like. And also, like, they just hit me isn't very inspiring. Trying to think of other questions.
I think a big one that a little bit in writing, but this is also more like just like general book bloggerness or whatever, is always like, how do I start? I'm like, you just gotta start. You just like, how do you think that person started? They took a photo and they uploaded it. That's how it starts. Like there's no like, you don't have to spin around 3 times and like drink a magic tea and then like suddenly you are allowed to start doing it. Like you just gotta start. You just gotta do it. It's so easy. Like I think maybe a little with writing too, where it's like, how do I start writing a book? I'm like, you start writing. Like maybe you Google some things and you write down some words, and that's it.
I think this is like a different type of question. Like the question that I don't like getting from just like general friends and family, like not writing friends, but just general friends, is just like, how's the writing going?
Fair,
or how's the book coming, as if there's just like one book.
The single book you have written, how is that going?
It's like you haven't talked to that person in like 2 years, and so you're like, well, completely different book now.
It's like, which book are you talking about? Family and friends that's a whole nother thing. The question I loathed was always, how many books have you sold? Because that's very indirectly asking me, like, how much money did you make? I was like, well, Aunt Gertrude, I'm not gonna would you like me to show you the paycheck? Like,
pull out my earnings report.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the spreadsheet. I know that to some people it doesn't seem like a rude question, because you're like, oh, how are the sales going? Like, that seems like an innocuous question, but A, often we don't know. And B, often it's poorly, so it's a touchy subject. And C, like I said, it's like asking, like, so are you rich now? Is what it feels like, which is laughable. Oh, man. There's so many other good. The other great relative questions I get, which is not so much a question as like a demand, but I have one uncle that demands that I write something like Harry Potter every time that I see him, then tells me he has good ideas and that we need to write a YA together and make lots of money. And I'm like, to see.
I've had similar conversations with my uncle. Ironically enough, that's really funny. It's like, I have great ideas. We could totally just write it together. And I'm like, you mean you give me your idea and I write it completely alone? I don't think I like
exactly.
that plan.
And then you would split the money 50-50 for some reason.
Right. No, thank you.
Like, ideas are not the issue here. Oh, yeah, and Griswold, I like, what have you written, aka if it isn't on the New York Times bestseller list, you're doing it wrong. That is so true. Every time I go to the doctor, every time I go to the chiropractor, and I'm like, it is on shelves, but you haven't heard of it, right? Like, next time I'm just gonna be like, oh, well, the Harry Potter books. I'm just kidding. That's not me.
I was like, no, Erin, don't do that. It's a bad lady.
Oh yeah, no. Okay, fine. It would have to be like Twilight. Do you know the Twilight books? You ever heard of those before?
Show your tattoo. Like, this is a forest,
This is Edward running.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's such an awkward conversation, because it's always like, oh, it's such and such book. And I've never heard of that. I know you've never heard of that.
I feel like maybe like, oh, I'll check it out is like a better response. So like, I've never heard of you before. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah, I like that's nice. Yeah.
They normally have like, the best intentions. It's
I'm
just
sure,
always
yeah.
you just know it's the same awkward conversation every time. Oh, I've
Yeah.
never heard of you. You're unknown.
Yeah.
I know. I did have one lady one time when I was on tour, so it was already like a really crazy, amazing experience. And then she said she was at the hotel, front of the hotel. She could have been totally bullshitting me. I know that. But I said, "What have you written?" I said, "Oh, what else have you written? What else have you written?" So I said the 3 books. And then she goes, "Oh my God, my mom is a fan of The Strange and Deadly Portraits of Bryony Gray." And yeah, I've never, ever had that happen before. Ever, ever, ever. So I was like, I don't know if you're lying to me, but I appreciate it either way.
Oh, and Griswold has a good life hack: is just say it's Reese's next book club trick.
Just
I
get
like
my
that
own
idea.
stickers and put them on the front seat.
Just steal them off of the front table and then just like
Can you
stick them on your
imagine?
book.
Well, I don't know about you, Rachel, but when I worked at Indigo, we would have the issue of self-published authors coming in and putting their books on the shelf, but you can't scan them.
What?
So I'd be like, are you giving them away for free then? There's no barcode that
no.
I can scan for the system. Like,
That's so weird.
we had that happen a couple times.
Interesting. Like, we had self-published authors come in, but usually it was to talk to the manager to have their books in, and then we had like a little or we had like a local and independent
section,
like shelf. Yeah. But no, that's so bizarre. They're just like leaving them there. How do they expect that they're getting money? Like, what?
Right? I was in the children's section, and this happened twice, and it happened with children specifically. So maybe us children's book authors are a little more bonkers. I don't know. But like, I did speak to lots of self-published authors that came in and did it right and wanted to talk to the manager. But yeah, there were 2 that I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Sir, this does not scan. You won't get the monies.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe it's like a good question to answer of like, or like something along the lines of like publishing questions and like, how do you self-publish? Oh damn, Kelly's not here. She would know all the stuff.
We need Kelly.
We need Kelly.
I can answer self-publishing questions because I hyper-fixated on it for a long time.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we can answer some self-publishing questions. We can answer some stuff on like traditional publishing. Yeah, that could be kind of fun. So like, Des, is there like a secret to self-publishing?
Tell me how I make all the money.
I don't think there's a secret, but like, I definitely think that self-publishing is very appealing. And like, I say this as a person who, like, being a traditional author has been like a goal of mine for like over 15 years probably. But you know, with like, even with like TikTok and like book talk taking off, like, it has really kind of changed the game with self-publishing in a lot of ways. And like, if you look into like other like indie programs like in your city, there's usually lots of cool things. Like, I live in Denver, so there's actually an indie author program with one of the like bigger bookstores. And like, not only will they like stock your book, but they'll promote it at like book events, and like there's a lot of other things that they'll do if you're an indie author in Denver, and like you go through the process of getting chosen. It's pretty interesting.
Cool.
That's very cool. I know that like I in the past tried to self-publish, and it was very much a case of it is way more work than traditional publishing. Like way more work, because you have to be, not only do you have to be an author and a writer, obviously, you also have to be like a salesperson, a business person. You know, you need to have that business mind. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have all these hats that you have to wear, you know, like, exhausting.
And like, funny enough, that's actually a big draw for me. That's a big reason why I'm drawn to self-publishing. Like, in high school, especially, I was in like our marketing club for 4 years straight. It's something that I really actually like. And so the thought of being able to like market my own books is like kind of cool. Especially if I like go into the mindset with it, like, if it sells, that is super great. But if it doesn't, like, that's cool too. People still search my book on Amazon and it pops up, and like, that's fulfilling for me.
That's cool. Well, I know like Kelly has a ton of videos on our channel if you want to go back and search for like self-publishing tips and tricks and what have you. I don't remember. There might be a video or two on like hybrid authors who self-publish and traditionally publish. I don't remember if we like did videos on that or not, but there is more talk about that in the book community lately. But I know people tend to stick with like one or the other, but like you could totally do both.
Yeah, you can definitely do both.
Like that's what be like end goal would be great. Like hybrid publishing would be super, super cool. Especially because like if you're trad published and you have like a book that sells gangbusters, that's automatically going to boost everything that you self-published, and like that's really cool. But like that's a big if.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of like genre based. Like I don't think I would ever self-publish like a YA fantasy, or probably really any type of fantasy, honestly. But I would consider it with like my rom-com if I like can't find an agent or a publisher for that. I would consider it because I just know that like that's a genre that self-publishing does well in, versus like YA fantasy, it doesn't do great. So
we have a question from Eduardo Cardona sorry.
Just say Kayla in the comments said that Chris Fox has some really interesting videos on self-publishing, so just a resource.
Yes, he does, and he actually has a book series too. It's like 5 books, I believe.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
So we had the question, is it true that poetry is hard to sell? I believe so, yeah. Traditionally, yes. I think it has been hard to sell collections of poetry unless you have like an already established fan base. You get people that, get really a big following on Instagram or something, and then they do get published, but I think it is on the harder side. I have a friend who does writing in verse, and I know it's not the same thing as poetry, but it's in a similar vein, and that's very hard to sell. I don't know if anyone else has input on that.
Well, I'm thinking back that like when I started working at the bookstore, which was like 2017, 2018, that was when poetry had a huge boom. So I'm not quite sure if that's like tapered off yet, because I unfollowed a lot of the poets that I was reading, and I'm not a big poetry person either, so like this could be no advice, but I like think that it's probably like easier than before, like easier than like 10 years ago, but yeah, I don't see it as like a major money maker, say.
I don't think it's ever been
have like a big blog or following.
I don't think it's ever been easy to sell. I don't know. Kayla Amanda says, unless you're a lead title, aren't you doing most of your own marketing, even if you're traditionally published? Yes and no. That's not a helpful answer. I know.
It's not in the same way you would as a self-published author.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, the draw to traditional publishing is because if I want to go like harder, I guess, at the marketing side of things, I have that power to do that. I get an advance in most cases from the publisher. And what I did last time when I published Witches, Bash and Ruin was just put some of that advance money towards my own independent marketing team. But then I also happened to get really good marketing from, it was Disney at the time before the whole drama unfolded. That's a whole nother chat. But they did really good marketing for the YA title. Middle grade for me and for most people, unless you're Percy Jackson is your book series, it's going to be quieter. But those are also things, it would be really hard, like Emma said, it's really hard to self-publish certain, categories and genres. So yeah, I mean, if you're a smaller title, if you're a quieter book, you could end up with very little marketing. Yeah, that's a possibility. But I have always found that I've been quite happy with the publishers, what they do, and like a lot of stuff is stuff I would never be able to do, like contacting bookstores, placement in like book club programs and like different things like that, right?
And especially with middle grade and YA, like getting into like school libraries and public libraries and stuff.
Yeah.
Getting
It's
getting
really
into
tough.
like school library journal and stuff like that is
Exactly.
a big deal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Getting trade pub reviews and even showing up in the magazines that bookstores order from and stuff like that, you know.
Well, it's so complicated nowadays because I know we were talking, actually, this is like a long time ago. I was thinking, Erin, your book, how like authors can't just have a book anymore. You kind of have to have a personality attached to it. So
Yeah.
I see so many authors on YouTube and on TikTok and on Instagram, like really making funny jokes and like making skits and like doing writing advice and like creating a whole thing, whether they're self-published or they're traditionally published. I see some very big name authors like really try and cultivate that social media following, which is like, yeah, it's like a weird thing of like, you probably have like thousands of dollars going towards marketing your book from the publisher, but then I guess if you want, you can also do it yourself, and like you can't go wrong there because you're just getting more people to know about it. But then you also maybe have the possibility of being like a small self-published author and having one video on TikTok hit the algorithm right, and then like everyone's buying your book. That's kind of what happened with the Atlas 6. So like, and now that was picked up by Tor, and like all this stuff's happening, and there's a sequel, and and so it's like
I think for authors, like you should always look at it, you know, whether you are, well, actually, unfortunately, if you are self-published, you kind of have to be doing your own marketing. I feel like, unless you're like Des and you're like, if it sells great, if it doesn't, I'm still enjoying myself. That's fine. But I think for traditional publishing, the benefit is that maybe I want to be, you know, more offline as an author than I still do get, you know, advertised to book clubs. I still do get into libraries and bookstores. I still do have my publisher running like little Instagram campaigns and stuff. And I don't necessarily have to try to blow up on TikTok. Where I feel like if you self-publish, you have to try a lot harder, is what I feel like.
No, you definitely have to try harder.
Yeah.
Like if you want to make it like a career, you can't just like put a book out there and be like, well, I hope it does well. Like but like the really cool thing now is there's a lot of resources for self-published authors. Like you can buy like a whole media campaign for your book that offers like a certain like a blog tour or like sending out arcs to like reviewers, like specific like TikTokers and things, and it's all done for you. The only difference is you have to pay for it.
Interesting.
But there's so many like things in the self-publishing world that you can really outsource to someone who might be better at it than you are, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I think if I ever tried to self-publish again, and I have nothing against the idea of self-publishing, I've actually always loved the idea of being hybrid. I think it's a fantastic idea to just have your like finger in all the pies, so to speak. But for me, I would have to be in a place where I could pay somebody to essentially be the publisher. Because when I was trying to do my own self-publishing thing, like the formatting, making the book cover, like figuring out I hated all of that. You know, it was like overly complicated and annoying. Because like I said, I'm like a caveman when it comes to the computer. I'm mashing these buttons and nothing is happening. I'm going to pull out my hair now, you know, like I had someone else make my very basic website because I'm like, I will spend all day and I'll be so frustrated. So if I did self-publish or go like the hybrid route, I would absolutely want to be in a place where I could pay someone to do all of the frustrating stuff, you know? And Griswold says, I wrote a 1-page synopsis earlier this year and it was difficult, far harder than query letter. How do you write your book synopsis? I do it with a lot of crying and sometimes wine. I think that every author you ever come across will agree that we all hate writing synopsises with the fury of 1,000 suns.
I do feel like I've never written one, but I do feel like the good thing about a synopsis is that like there's very much a format for it. Like,
yeah,
you know, like find a good like kind of template format and follow that. Like I think Susan Denard has some information on that.
It's like impossible to find now. I have been looking for it for a while.
I can find it.
and she like reposted it to a new website, and that website doesn't exist anymore.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think if I were trying to figure out how to write a synopsis again, and I do every time, I have to look up formats every single time. Just get a few, lined up, read over them, see how the person does it effectively to sum up their story, and try to follow a similar format. Like what I do, I go through my own plot so many times that I usually like know things how they go essentially. So I'll just sit down and write it all out in one go. And then it, whether it's a 1 page or 5 page, it usually turns out to be like 15 to 18 pages. And I just have to like butcher it until it's short enough, essentially, is what happens. Kayla Amanda says, or I'll just call you Kayla. What was the new website that no longer exists? Does anyone know the name of it?
It's Publishing Crawl
Publish
doesn't
Crawl.
exist anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, Pub Crawl
I didn't
doesn't
realize.
exist anymore?
Yeah.
No.
So
Oh my
all
God,
of her articles that are from Publishing Crawl, when you click on the link on her website, it like takes you to an error page.
Oh, boo. I
Oh,
loved that
no.
website.
I'm gonna like tweet at her or something.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, can you upload those? Because I'm sure she has them saved somewhere.
Probably.
I was
somewhere.
so sad. I was like, no, this great resource is gone.
Weird. I wonder why. Interesting. But yeah, that's same with query letters too. Like just looking up, you can look up successful synopsis, successful query letters, and find out like, what works for you.
We all have longer videos on our channel if you want to go in.
Yeah.
You need advice if you need advice for literally anything writing related. Go and look up our backlog of videos.
So many videos.
The years and years posted 5 videos a week.
But this is a great place for us to kind of wrap up. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been great. I really enjoyed this Q&A. So do we have a chat for next week? Do we know?
Do not know.
Megan's not here. She's the one with the notes.
Okay.
I don't think
Mystery
we
chat.
have anything set because we didn't have anything for this week. So
okay.
Join us next week for something also cool.
Yes, join us next week because you love us. That's why.
There you go.
But anyway, thanks for joining us so much, and we will see you guys next time.